All right, welcome to the Work Sucks, but I Like It podcast, where we try to answer the question, what should work really feel like? Today we have David Kolbe. He is the CEO and visionary of Kolbe Corp, has lived and breathed the Kolbe concept his whole life. He's an author and also a speaker. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
No, awesome. David, define work for us today.
Work, it's really just anything you're trying to accomplish. So, you can think of the old physics definition where it's moving mass over a distance. Be metaphorical and apply the same thing to your life.
You know, it's funny, David. I've asked that question I don't know how many times. You are the first one, for the record, to answer it the same way I define it with physics.
I mean, it's handy, we've learned it back in high school or maybe junior high. But the problem is that's not how most of us think of it. It's not just, oh, I've got a 5 kilogram weight and I'll move it 10 yards. It's work in our life is more, ephemeral, not ephemeral, but it's less concrete than that.
I like the psychological forces too, little play on words with that, building on, right? It's not just force of gravity, like you said. I love that. That's awesome. Like I said, you're the first guest that's ever said that. So, David, I talked about the Kolbe concept. I mentioned it in your intro. Define that for the audience so we can kind of get a foundation here for the discussion today. Yeah, so I mentioned the Kolbe concept in the intro. Would you mind defining that for the audience, please?
Yeah, the Kolbe concept starts with an understanding of this part of our mind called conation. Conation is different than the thinking or feeling parts of the human mind. It's the way we take action. So the Kolbe concept is that this part of the mind exists. It is fairly stable. And when we know it, we can use that knowledge and understanding of those traits that we have to accomplish the things we care about most. So that's really it at the foundation. Then there are all kinds of applications.
So I love that. So I took your quiz months back, David, and I was excited to share my results. I don't know what they mean, but I'm an 8634. Now the audience is going to be like, what did he just say? What are the 4 categories? Let's start with that make up this concept.
So it's 4 what we call action modes. And in order that you just gave the numbers, they are fact finder, follow through, quick start, and implementer. The fact finder is how we deal with gathering and sharing information. So it kind of is a continuum from being very data intensive, needing information, doing research, to then the other end of that continuum is really looking at just a few key data points, simplifying, keying into just the couple of things that are most important. And then obviously, there's that whole mid-range in between on the continuum, and that's true for all of the 4. They're all easiest to understand when we think about the extremes, but most of us operate somewhere in between the extremes. So anyway, that's fact finder. The next one is follow through. That's how we deal with systems, structure, organization. So on the one end, and the way I'm starting with all these are the higher numbers. So what was your follow throughs is 6, correct?
6, good memory. Yep.
Yeah. So the higher numbers, like toward 8, 9, 10, in follow through, that means somebody who creates systems and structure. If they step into a chaotic situation, they see patterns. They put things where they're supposed to go. Organizational. The other end of the spectrum is somebody who's very open-ended and adaptable, somebody who finds shortcuts rather than following all of the steps in a plan or a system. The next one is what we call quick start. It's how we deal with the unknown, with risk. So initiating those 8, 9, 10s in quick start, they really push for experimenting, for trying out new things. They innovate in that kind of classic brainstorm bolt from the blue sense. The other end of a quick start is somebody who stabilizes, who keys into what's been working and sticks with it. They prevent chaos from happening. And then the last of these 4 action modes is implementer. The name is the most confusing of the 4, I think, for a lot of people. It's not how we implement as and carry things out. It's how we deal with the tangible, tactile 3-dimensional world. So the initiating implementers physically build, construct, use their hands to take action. At the other end of the spectrum is somebody who envisions, imagines. They will talk or think about solutions rather than physically construct them.
No, I love that, David. So I've taken a lot of personality tests over the years and all different types of things of what character I'd be in Hogwarts, right? Harry Potter. I guess like
Yep.
with the Kolbe concept, which I really love here, I guess when you take this and you get the results, I'll just speak for myself here. When I see it, I'm like, okay, I'm strong here, but I'm weak in here. How should we be reacting to the results of this assessment?
I hope, and I think the way most of the people react when they read them, I hope it's that you don't see it as, well, I'm weak over here. I understand there is that tendency. Sometimes we're programmed to think that way. But with all of your results in each of the four action modes, it just says this is who Tony is in each of the four. So in quick start, your number is low to 3. But that doesn't mean you have a weakness or a shortcoming in quick start. Your strength is in being that person who stabilizes, who sticks with what's working, who is able to kind of call BS when somebody's like, "Oh, let's try this new thing. Let's just go for it." And you're like, "You know what? Let's not, because we don't need to. And here's why we shouldn't. And here's what we should be doing instead." Now, there might be a balance and a negotiation there. And by the way, this doesn't mean you can't just go for it or just, try something out or experiment, but typically you won't. And so what we hope people's reaction is kind of a, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Some of these things I realized about myself, but it's giving me the courage to act on them." So that's one of the big things is when you get it, is understanding this is who I am, and I'm going to tap into them more rather than hearing voices telling me, "Oh, you should be better this other way," to spend all of your time and energy operating against your instinctive strengths. No, no, no. Find the biggest opportunities and the most opportunities to work with your strengths, and then where your strengths aren't what the situation calls for. So I'll use myself as an example. In follow through, my strength is being open ended, adaptable, finding shortcuts. There are lots of times in life where creating a system and living within a structure is just easier. I mean, let's face it. So when I find that mismatch, sometimes it's just, "David, suck it up. You've got to do it." But then there are other techniques I can figure out for, all right, well, it's not what comes naturally for me, but it needs to happen that way right now. So how can I make that happen?
No, I love that. So, David, I'm very curious, like with these assessment type things, like the one your team has created, how did that come about? Like, what was sort of the realization? It's a family business, I take it, right? I guess like walk
Yep.
us through how this was founded. Why was this created?
Well, it's going to be a silly answer because it's going back like a long, long way. So, my name's on the company and the assessment, but I didn't create it. My mom actually created the assessment. It happened over a few years. It wasn't just like a one day she came up with it. But the why part, the way you asked the question, goes back even further. So, my grandfather, a man named Eldon Wunderlich, created something called the Wunderlich Personnel Test, which, if listeners know of it, it's probably because the NFL used it. They still do, but for years and years and years, decades, it was required of all of the athletes going through the draft combine. So people would talk about, so and so's Wonderlic score. And it was basically a short form intelligence test. So the why was my mom talking to my grandfather and saying, "Well, yeah, but dad, so we all know smart, motivated, well meaning people who don't perform particularly well in a job where they did perform well and then they get a promotion and now they don't, even though they're clearly still smart enough." And he basically said to her, "Okay, well, I've got my thing. I figured out my assessment. If you think there's something else, you figure it out." So that was in the back of her head for a long time. She was an entrepreneur at heart and started a couple other businesses. And then eventually she got to this notion of, okay, I'm going to figure out what this other thing is. And so she isolated it, figured out, well, it's this thing called conation, which that concept and that word goes back thousands of years, literally to Plato, who came up with this three parts of the mind concept. So that's the why.
I love that. So, sorry, walk us through again the definition of conation, just so I get all the terms here so we can keep building on this.
Yeah, it's the way we take action. It's what drives us, and we call it instinctive because from what we've seen, it's not a learned behavior. It sticks with you. We've done test, retest reliability studies, and it's quite stable. So Kolbe index results don't seem to change much over time. They'll change a little bit, just kind of the margin of error. So conation, I mentioned before, three parts of the mind, and the other two are cognitive, which is thinking, IQ, and affective. So I think it's important to keep those things in mind because we are more familiar with those two parts of the mind. You mentioned taking personality tests. Generally speaking, when somebody just says, "Oh, I took a personality test," it's an affective instrument. It is your kind of the emotional feeling or affective side of who you are. Those are, that's very important. Just like the cognitive intelligence, learned behavior part is very important. It's a real part of who you are, and we should learn about that too. But this cognitive part is not how we think or feel, but it's the way we act.
So, this conative part, I guess, David, in your mind, how did you take action to join, I guess, your mom's business? Were you always part of the business? Did you leave?
Well,
Come in?
yeah, I mean, yes and no. As you said in the introduction, I've been part of it my whole life. The company was founded almost 51 years ago now in the back bedroom of our house. So I was there at the inception, but I was a little kid. It wasn't started with the assessment or doing what we do now. It actually started as an educational publishing and mail order business. So I was editing manuscripts and stapling catalogs and putting labels on them. But as a grown up, as an adult, no, I didn't move right into the family business. I started work in Washington, D.C., doing policy stuff, working for a congressman from Texas. I always wanted to be a lawyer. So eventually I became a lawyer and was in private practice for a little while. And then my mom recruited me to work in Kolbe Corp. So kind of became a family business when I started that.
Did she have to interview you?
Yeah, no, because she knew me pretty well, but she did have to recruit me. It took a little while. She was saying, "Oh, we could really use you," but I was kind of liking being a lawyer. I'm not one of those ex-lawyers who's like, "Oh, I couldn't stand it. I'm so glad to leave." I enjoyed it. So she needed to make it enticing for me to join the family business. And again, that wasn't where I had ever pointed myself or thought I want to work in the family business. So it was really two things, or maybe, well, two on the pull side, which was I said, well, okay, if I'm going to come work there, I want to be general counsel. So I still wanted to do legal stuff. And she said, fine, and it wasn't just the title. We actually had a fair amount of intellectual property, unfortunately lawsuits, but other intellectual property work that we were doing at the time. We still do, but then it was in its more formative stages, so there was a lot more of that legal work, which was interesting. And then the other side in terms of the recruiting was this is the late '90s, so the dot-com boom was still booming. It was before the bust, and we were becoming an internet-driven business, and that was appealing. It's like, "Oh, this is really cool. It's interesting. A new challenge." So that's how she recruited me, really.
No, I love that. So, David, I guess who's your ideal audience for this assessment? Are you working with corporations, with lawyers, with who are you reaching out to? Who are you working with?
The bulk of our clients by number, I would say, are small and medium-sized businesses. It
Interesting.
may or may not be, founder-led. Sometimes, that was a while ago. We have a number, fewer number, but lots of revenue from large businesses, education, government. But I think we're probably most driven by small to medium-sized businesses and entrepreneurs in particular. Now, having said that, I mean, that's where the revenue comes from. I also love working with just individuals. So let's say you find out about us, you go to our website, Kolbe.com, just to take an index and apply it to your life. So it might be your professional life, but it's driven by you. It's not driven by your boss or your organization. And by the way, it might not be for your career. It might be for your personal life. We have applications for parents, also for couples, not on the matching or dating side, but on the, hey, if I'm in a committed relationship, help me understand who I am and who my partner is.
No, I love that. I love the personal side, but I want to talk more about the business side. I guess how do businesses find you? I feel like that could be a tough sell. Like, hey, we need to do this, assessment to improve our
Yeah.
business. How do you share that, teach people that's important?
It is tough because nobody wakes up thinking, I need help on the cognitive part of the mind. They just don't know about it. So, frankly, one of the ways that we do it is by trying to get the word out about conation and how, look, there are only three parts of the human mind in what we're talking about. Obviously, there are many physical parts of the human mind, but educating people about what this cognitive part of the mind is and then saying, and we can help you with that. Our best way is word of mouth. So, if you think about, I mentioned entrepreneur led businesses, when they use us and they love us, they tell their friends, they tell their other entrepreneurs that they network with, oh, yeah, I'm using Kolbe and it's fantastic. It gave me insight into my leadership team or myself or whatever. But then also lots of other channels, social media, we do some advertising, all the classic ways you might market and communicate to the big world.
I love that. So, David, would you consider yourself an entrepreneur or a 9 to 5 person?
Neither. So I didn't start the company. So I maybe this is kind of an homage or respect for my mom who did start the company. She was the true entrepreneur where she was kind of risking everything, starting it from scratch. She was the person, employee number one. And if something had to happen, she was the one who would do it. And sure, she then grew the business. I came in when the business was a lot more stable and we had a team, so I wasn't doing everything. Yeah, I mean, I'm CEO and visionary, and there have definitely been times since I've been in that role where, look, I have to step in and do it. I would never say I'm 9 to 5 because I don't think you can really be a leader in probably any organization, but especially a smaller one where it's like, yeah, it's 5 o'clock, I'm punching out. But I also don't see myself as the entrepreneur who starts up from scratch. I've done that a couple of times, but I dabbled in it. I'm not a true entrepreneur.
So, I just want to get clear because you've said it again there. So, you're the CEO and visionary. What do you mean by the position visionary? Is it like Simon Sinek's concept of like visionary chief officer?
It's similar. It's really, if you've ever heard of something called EOS or the Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's a system that was created by Gino Wickman that helps entrepreneurs run their businesses. And they describe the role of CEO as the visionary for an organization. It's kind of seeing where the company should be going in the future, setting that course, leading the culture, leading the people, but not taking a role that gets really down into the weeds. So they like that phrase visionary rather than CEO to make that distinction.
So, David, as a CEO and visionary of this company, how do you see success moving forward? Or how do you define success today for that matter?
For us, our mission, so success for us is getting closer and closer to achieving our mission, which is to help people understand their cognitive strengths so they can achieve the things they care about most. So that's where I mentioned, most of our clients are businesses. So a lot of the times the things they care about most are the bottom line. How can we make more money? But they might care about how do they get to that? So, hey, how does my leadership team work better together? How can we improve our selection process by identifying the right people to hire? There could be different parts of becoming more successful for what they care about. If it's on the personal side, it might be, how can I improve my relationship with my spouse? How can I be a better parent? Or that career goal of, how can I, and this I think relates so much to the podcast here, how can I be in a job that fits me better so that instead of feeling like this is just a grind, this is something that I thrive on. I quit work with more energy than when I started.
I love that. So, we say a lot, David, on the show. Success is not a matter of good luck; it's good skills. I like how you just said that last sentence there. How do you stop work and feel more energized by it? Like, what's that skill? How do you get there?
Well, so our part of it, I mean, there's so much to that question. I know you talk about that all the time on the podcast, which I love. Our piece of that is really understanding this instinctive part of the way you take action. So What you want to do is you want to set yourself up for success in terms of your cognitive strengths. So I'm the kind of person that needs to get information, do a lot of research, become an expert rather than just guess seat of the pants. And you and I are similar in this. I'm an 8 in fact finder. So
Gotcha. Same.
I want to set myself up to have time to delve into stuff. So here's an example leading the company. AI is so important these days, both in terms of, well, how do we run the business, but also where are we going? How can we use AI as a tool ourselves, but also to deliver our products and services to our clients? I'm the kind of person who needs to do research. And no, I'm not going to be the world's foremost expert in AI, but I'm also not just going to do a seat of the pants kind of review of it and go, oh, yeah, I looked into it for an hour and I think this is the direction we should go.
Mhm.
If I create a situation where I don't have the time to go deeper, then some people might look at it and think, David, you don't need to spend that much time. You're the top level leader. That should be your CTO who should get down in that level. Well, that would be taking me out of my strength. So when I learn that about myself, I can actually use it that way.
No, awesome. So one other question, David, we like to ask on the show is that what is something that sucks about your work, and what are you doing to make it not suck?
Well, I'll give it really, it's almost cheating because it's just a timely thing. My executive assistant retired, and we haven't replaced her yet. It was more sudden than we were expecting for some health reasons. So the transition, we didn't have time. We had a plan, but it was just very sped up. So what I'm doing is rehiring that position because the part that sucks is I'm doing a lot more of the stuff that I mentioned setting myself up for success. So with my strength and follow through being open-ended and adaptable and not driving everything to closure, one of the ways I make that happen is I have somebody who works really closely with me who keeps track of all of the things that do need to get finished and closed and tidied up. And she either makes me do it where I need to do it, because the woman who retired, because she. So either she makes me do it or she says, David, I step in and do these things, or do you need to do them? So I created a great system, but it has broken down and I need to fix it.
No, understandable, understandable. Just out of curiosity, David, how big is your team there?
32 people
Holy smokes, that's awesome. And you're based out of where again, so the audience can place you?
based in Phoenix, and we have people also in Texas and Illinois.
Cool. If audience members, David, want to reach out to you and learn more about their cognitive skills here, where's a good place for them to land?
Best place is our website, kolbe.com, Kolbe.
Awesome. Well, David, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much today.
Thanks for having me on, Tony. It's been great.
Thank you.